So today's special guest is Mr. Jack Autry. And Jack's been in the martial arts a long time. He's considered one of the most prominent seniors training in the Ed Parker system. And Jack's going to share a little bit of his insight about what it was like to train in Kenpo, what it was like to work out with Ed Parker, and related to some of the people that trained in Kenpo. So Jack, it is good to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Paul. Thanks for asking. I've been doing a lot of soul searching on 55 years of doing Kenpo. I've got a lot of stories, so I don't know which ones to share first. Did you know Mr. Tom Kelly?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Well, people ask me how I became so proficient in freestyling. And when you spar with Tom Kelly, who was 6'3", 315 pounds, and he could kick you upside the head faster than you could block it. When I freestyled with him 2 or 3 times a week for 3 or 4 years, there's nobody walking out there in this earth that I'm afraid of. He was such a gentle giant. In 1972, we both won the California State Karate Championship. I was a heavyweight brown belt. I weighed 215 pounds. He was standing next to me as a heavyweight black belt at 315 pounds. Well, friend, you can't give up 100 pounds. I don't care what you're doing. You can't give that away. But what's interesting is that once I won that championship, Elvis Presley heard about that. And he called Ed Parker and he said, "Can I work out with Jack?" He said, "You want to spar with Jack? Maybe not a good idea, but I can put it together if you want to do it." So long story short, I'm in the dojo about 2 weeks after I won the championship. I'm kicking, I'm punching the bag, I'm working out. All of a sudden, the big black limo pulls into the West LA school where I'm training. And Elvis Presley gets out and 2 of his bodyguards, and they come into the door. Ed calls me off the mat and he says, "Jack, I want you to do me a favor." "Okay, what's that, Ed?" I said, "I want you to spar with Elvis." And I go, with all due respect, Ed, I'm kind of on my game right now. And he said, "No, you don't understand." He said, "Elvis is a 5th degree black belt. You're not even a 1st degree black belt yet, but you've been fighting for 5 years. So I want you to spar with him. I know you, I want you to put the body shots in hard, put in the punches, put in the kicks, let him throw whatever he can at you. But whatever you do, don't hit him in the face." That was my instructions from Mr. Parker at that point in time. And that story goes on, and I can tell you how that ended up. I don't know if that's good information for the audience or not, because after we sparred for about 45 minutes, and he was soaking wet and walking off the mat, and he's shaking his head no, and I'm going, "What's wrong, Elvis? You didn't like that?" He said, "I got to tell you something, Jack. No one has ever made me look like that. I felt like a white belt. I couldn't hit you with anything." And I said, "Look, don't feel bad. I've been fighting semi-professional for 5 years, and I just wanted to give you a good workout." He said, "Well, you gave me a workout, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you an offer." I said, "An offer?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I want you to pick any car in the world that you want. I don't care if it's a Rolls Royce, Ferrari, Cadillac. I'm going to buy it for you, and that's your signing bonus to move back to Memphis with me. I've got 6 bodyguards, and you could kick all 6 of their butts at the same time. I want you to teach them what you know. So when we're out on the road, I'm going to feel a lot safer than I do today." And I said, "Elvis, I appreciate it. That's quite an honor. But to be honest with you, I got 3 kids. I have a construction company. I'm a very busy man. Had you asked me 3 kids ago, I'd move tomorrow." But he said, "Are you going to pass?" And I said, "Yes, sir, with due respect, but it's 1972. We'll work from now on together." And he said, "Okay, I respect that." And that was my involvement with Elvis Presley. It was short and sweet and to the point. And we got together after that a few times, and those are other stories we'll share for a later time. But another story that comes to my mind is that about Ed Parker's personality. It was somewhere late 70s, early 80s. I was on a black belt fighting team and I was the anchor man. You know what that means. I'm the last guy to fight. So I get up and either I'm really ahead or I'm really behind, but either way, I got to come out and fight. So we're flying to Northern California from LAX. And I'm sitting next to Ed, and he's not saying anything in particular that, you know, it's a nice try. There was a college up there that put together 5 really good black belts, and they wanted to take us on. And so I go, oh, okay, that's great. So we land, we get to this convention center. We're standing out front. There's all 5 of us fighters and Ed Parker. And all of a sudden, this female reporter comes up, and I think, oh, she's looking to, I said, well, there's Ed right over there. She said, well, who's Jack Autry? And I said, well, that's me. And I don't understand why she's asking about me, but she says, and listen to this. She says, how do you feel about this full contact karate tournament you're going to participate tonight in about 2 hours? How do you feel about fighting in that? And I looked at Ed, and Ed goes, oh yeah, Jack, I forgot to tell you, it's full contact. I said, what do you mean it's full contact? Because all the fighting we did was, it was point fighting, right? And he says, no, you're going to put gloves on. And I said, you mean I can hit him in the face? He said, you can hit him anywhere you want. But that's the way Ed Parker was. I mean, he just, out of the blue, oh yeah, Jack, I forgot to tell you, it's full contact tonight. And that's just one of those stories that stick in my mind. And I've got so many of them. We would be here for 8 hours, Paul. I just don't even know where to start and where to stop with my stories with Ed Parker are unbelievable.
I'm going to help you. Let me walk you through a few things. So what brought you to Kenpo and why Ed Parker?
Oh, okay. Good question, because I started in 1967. I've already graduated college. I'm not playing ball anymore. I'm not playing football. I'm not running track. I'm not doing any of that. And I drive by this school on the corner of Sepulveda and Santa Monica Boulevard, and I see this big sign up there. And what's this karate stuff? I don't know what's karate. So I pull into the dojo, and just by chance, Ed Parker's sitting there behind the desk. I walk in there and I introduce myself, and I said, I don't know what this karate thing is. What is all this? What are you guys doing here? And he said, well, Jack, he says, you're a pretty big guy. You ever been in a fight? I said, have I ever been in a fight? And I said, well, a few. Yes, sir. And he said, well, have you won the last few? And I said, well, the last few. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, if you want to know what this is, we do, take off your shoes, come on the mat with me, and I'll show you what it is we teach here. And like a fool, I don't know what I'm doing. I take off my shoes. I walk on the mat with Ed Parker, mind you. He's 11 years my senior, but he's a senior Grand Master of American Kenpo Karate. So I walk in there and he says, okay, Jack Autry, I want you to punch me in the face. I went, what? He said, I want you to hit me in the face as hard as you can. And man, I don't know this guy. I'm not angry at him. So anyway, I wind up and I throw a haphazard punch, and he catches it with his left hand and he pushes it back. And he said, my mother hits harder than that. And I said, oh, really? So Jack winds up back here, and I'm going to do a John Wayne on Ed Parker. And I throw this punch to his face as hard as I can, Paul. And I'm telling you, the next thing I knew, I'm looking at the ceiling, and then bam, I fall down on my back, and he's on top of me about to punch me in the face. And I said, whoa, whoa. I said, what was that? He said, that's American Kenpo Karate. And I said, no one has ever done that to me in my life. Where do I sign? How soon can I start? That was the beginning.
Wow. Amazing. From then on, you had built a relationship with Ed Parker.
Yeah, it built really swiftly. Like I said, we were only 11 years apart, but he loved the idea that I was a business owner. My construction company, at the end of it I had 60 employees, 6 superintendents, and he loved the idea that I was a businessman first, and that Kenpo was like my passion, my hobby. I had to get into doing something physical, and Kenpo was perfect. I could run my businesses. I could take care of my kids. I had 3 kids at that time. And so it was, and we instantly became very good friends. And there's some issues that I helped him out financially. You know, he got into some problems with some people. For some reason, Ed Parker trusted the wrong people. Instead of trusting people like Paul Casey or Jack Autry, he would trust some strangers that unfortunately tried to take advantage of him. And so I was very instrumental in saving his house one time. He was about to lose it to some of these shady characters. And I brought in one of my real estate attorneys because I was buying and selling real estate all the time. And we saved his house, and he never forgot that.
Did your children ever train in Kenpo?
Yes, my 2 younger boys, Anthony and Angelo. In fact, the day that Ed Parker died, he did seminars in West LA, and I did them with him. And my 2 little boys, Angelo was 5 and Anthony was 8. And Angelo was a white and Anthony was a purple belt. And at the end of that seminar, it was kind of funny. Angelo was sitting down and he was crying when it was over. And he says, Angelo, come here. He says, what's the problem? He said, well, I was told that I'm not going to get a certificate for being in the seminar. And Ed goes, well, let me ask you a question, Angelo. Were you here during the host seminar? Yes, sir, I was. He said, did you pay attention to everything I said? Yes, sir, I did. He said, then come over here. You're going to get a certificate, and I want you to take off your belt. So he takes off his white belt, and Ed Parker signs it December 15th, 1990. Okay? Yes. So then takes off Anthony's belt, signs it. I've got both of those belts in my safe today. Sorry. Isn't that funny? He's dead 32 years tomorrow, and it still breaks me up. It's amazing.
Funny. My son wears a signed yellow belt by Ed Parker.
Really?
Yeah. That's an old belt, sir. That's
yeah. Well, you know what? It's like people need to know this side of Ed Parker. I mean, how he believed in God and Jesus Christ. I mean, it gave me the wherewithal, like I mentioned, that I was able to forgive the guy that killed Angelo. So that Angelo was 5 when Ed Parker died. When he was murdered, he was 28 years old. So a whole lifetime. And to answer your question, all of my boys were very proficient in martial arts, very proficient. You wouldn't want to, that's part of the reason he got shot, is because, well, I won't go into all that, but the guy was afraid of Angelo to go hand to hand with him. So he showed up with a 9mm and a high capacity magazine and unloaded it on him. So anyway, that's another story.
Let's move on. Let's move to a different section. So in your travels, your journey of Kenpo, you have obviously come across many, many practitioners on that path.
Yes.
Obviously, you brought up Tom Kelly, Elvis Presley. Who else have you met that either inspired you or changed your way in Kenpo?
Okay.
Gave you something
good question. 2 people that come to my mind first, Bruce Lee and Joe Louis. Joe Louis first. Lincoln Conti's my cousin, and he was personal friends with Joe Louis, and he set up a time for me to spar with Joe. Again, I was a brown belt, but a very enthusiastic Kenpo brown belt. So I met Joe Louis at John Natividad School in Culver City on Washington Boulevard. And John was supposed to show up. Chuck Norris was supposed to show up. Darnell Garcia was supposed to show up. And the only guy that's there is Jack Autry. And when John's leaving the dojo, and he hands me the key. And he goes, I said, where are you going, John? He said, oh, I got something I have to go to. So when you guys are done, lock it up and throw the key in the mailbox. And he leaves, and I'm there with Joe Louis. And I'm going, wow. He's 3 years in a row, grand champion, international, you know who Joe Louis is. And he says, okay, Jack, let's work out. He says, you hold the heavy bag. And he says, I'm going to start with some roundhouse kicks. He raises his left leg up in a roundhouse position, and he executes 100 kicks and never puts his leg back on the ground again. And I go, man, I'm in deep doo-doo today. That's for sure. So then he switches over with the right leg, 100 kicks. So I learned a lot from Joe Louis. I mean, people underestimate how hard champions train. How many guys ever did 100 kicks and never put your leg back on the ground? And then we sparred a little bit, and you know, he's world famous for his back knuckle. And so here's another interesting story with Ed Parker. So we worked out, Joe and I, it was over. And then I tell Ed, I said, I just worked out with Louis, but I said, I got a problem. His back fist is so friggin' fast. There's no way I can block it. He said, yes, you can. You don't meet it, you beat it. You don't beat it, you meet it. You don't beat it, you meet it. I said, what do you mean by that, Ed? He said, look, before he throws it, his shoulder's gonna go, boom, and then his back fist. You watch that shoulder. And when that shoulder goes, you do the hardest you can, do an extended outward block. Don't even believe me, his fist is gonna be there and you're gonna block it. I said, really? He said, try it. So the next weekend, I'm together with Joe Louis, and we do all of our warming up and everything. We start to spar, and I know he's going to do his back knuckle and side kick. I know it's coming. And sure enough, as soon as I see that shoulder go, boom, just like that, man, I throw that arm up there and I blocked it. I mean, I was more shocked than he was, right? And he looked at me and he got so mad. So we got back in fighting stance again. He tried it again. Boom, same thing. I blocked it twice. I thought this guy's going to kill me. But anyway, so I learned things from Joe Louis. Ed Parker taught me how to you can't beat it, you meet it. And that was a really good lesson. And then my little thing with Bruce, you know, he's world famous for that 1-inch punch, right? And he said, look, he says, Jack, I want to show you this punch. And I said, okay, Bruce, you know. He said, now look at me, Jack. I'm at the biggest I've ever been is 140, 145. How much do you weigh? At that time, I was 230. He said, so you're almost 100 pounds bigger than me. And I go, yeah. And he said, watch this. And so, you know, he goes through the whole thing, shows me how to do it. And I'm doing it, and I'm doing it. And he said, now, who do you think's going to hit harder? Me with 145 or with you 230 pounds? And I said, well, I think if I learned the technique, I can hit pretty hard. And he says, you're so right. It's all about technique. As you know, Paul, it's all about technique. I don't care what you're doing, you know, what kick it is, what punch, what block, whatever it is, it's technique. And so I drilled that, and I finally got it down. So don't let me do a 1-inch punch on your chest.
Actually, I would probably encourage it. You knock some sense into me. You know, Trejo was a huge fan of learning anything that he incorporated, but he used to always say there are two facets. There's the ideal phase and there's the real deal phase.
Yes.
And
yes.
he was the real deal. The present climate here is that we need to stop with looking at ourselves and rather look at our teachers and the people that walked in front of us. And the reason they were so successful was because of these solid principles that Ed Parker created.
Yes.
There's a common thing right now people are using that Mr. Parker did not want to traditionalize his system. He never traditionalized it. He was always evolving. The only thing that he kept current or constant was the formalities.
Yes.
And that's it. And that's because that shows us where we all have a commonality and we all do our salutations the way he did it. And if you do it correctly, then you'll be immediately recognized as an Ed Parker student. Correct. Frank used to say, if you train in Ed Parker's system, you are a protege.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. That's open for
it depends.
So
well, I've known Frank, let's see, let's go back to I knew him before 74, but in 1974 was my black belt promotion in Pasadena, and I'm lined up there with Lincoln Conti, and there was about 5 of us in the front row. Frank Trejo was in the back row going for his brown. from green to brown in the same test I went to my black belt, right? And so, you know, we go through all the basics that Ed Parker would put us through and do all of our katas and all of our stuff and our sets. And then it's time to freestyle. And so I have the utmost respect for Frank Trejo, but this is when I first met him and I didn't know exactly, well, he wasn't who he turned into at that point in time. So Ed Parker says, okay, Frank, pick one of the guys in the front row that you want to spar with for your promotion to brown. And he looked up and down the line and he said, anybody but Autry. I don't know, is that a compliment or what is that? But anyway, I was pretty active at that point in fighting and people knew about it. But I had a great relationship with Frank, and it was so sad what he went through. And it's just, yeah.
I can only relate to the fact, and I've shared this with you privately. For those that
Yeah.
do know me, my daughter was a child with special needs. And
Yes.
after her birth, some complications arose. And then later on, we discovered that she may not live a long life, but she left a legacy and an inspiration that is unmatched by anybody I've ever met.
Amen.
Mr. Parker was my Bruce Lee.
Yes.
And that's the reason I went to Pasadena. And when I met Frank Trejo, Daddy Rodardi, and Ed Parker all in the same day, November the 12th,
Wow.
1970, I was at Greenville. And the lesson he taught me, I never forgot. And then so I started in January with him in Pasadena, and I never left him till after his untimely passing. Joe Bina taught me a lesson. The greatest gift is to live a life that inspires others to personal greatness.
Amen.
Frank Trejo taught me that.
Yeah.
Ed Parker taught me that. And in my conversations now with you, you just reaffirmed that with me. So that is a beautiful thing. So let's go on to some other aspects.
Sure.
So through your training, was it always in West LA or was it Pasadena? Where would you train primarily?
No, I was 99% in West LA, only because I lived there. And but a lot of my promotions happened in Pasadena. You know, Ed would bring us all together one place or the other. So all the West LA guys, I've known them all. When Jeff Speakman came in 1983, and there's another interesting story. I've been on every one of Jeff Speakman's promotion boards from first black all the way through. He just got 10th black this past July in Las Vegas. And I've been on every one of those boards. And he made a comment about that to the audience that particular day. Yes, I went to 9th, he went to 10th. So, but he deserves it. I mean, there's people that you and I both know there's a lot of people out there wearing a 10th that I don't think Mr. Parker would agree. But I think Jeff and John and the guys that we know, Bob White and Paul Dye, all these guys, they deserve it. They've earned it. And they walk with the pride. You know, it's so funny. When I put on this 9th degree black belt, Paul, I go to myself, it's still not comfortable. I'm going, do I deserve this?
I think Frank answered that question. He says, sometimes it's not. Mr. Parker had a good quote on it. He said he referred always to Ed Parker on any of these subjects as the ultimate answer. He said, "It's not your decision, it is mine." And
that's true.
Now he said that, and I think what happens is sometimes you've earned it, you don't believe it, you'll grow into it, and you'll evolve even more. And that's the true evolution of Ed Parker's system. When he said, not traditionalizing it, we're going to grow and evolve. And he always looked to the younger students for wisdom. Not that we'd have the answer, but a fresh mind or a fresh set of eyes on it
always
will give you a different perspective, because we fall into these ruts of failing to expand our mind.
Yes.
Ed Parker's system is based on thinking. Really, that's the essence of it. He can teach you to be a badass in 6 months if you have the hard work put in, you have the determination, you don't give up, and he trains you that way. But to evolve and to be a better martial artist, a true journey, You need to think, you need to study, you need to ask questions.
Yes.
I was at many of his seminars, and I would always be amazed at, I would be in the back of the room because I was a brown belt at the time. And he would have these black belts up there, and their responses were they didn't know, or they would give a half-assed, answer,
Right.
or they didn't want to. And I would hear him say, "Well, I don't want to embarrass you, sir." that answer and Mr. Parker, I don't think this can work, are the two of the most chilling responses I've ever seen. And all of a sudden, the hair on Ed Parker's back of his neck stood up, and he gained an inch or two. He says, come up here.
Yes, yes. The invitation. I saw it often.
I had the great pleasure of being on the mat with him on several occasions. And he was always funny, because one time he was in Pasadena and he said to me, he was doing something. I don't know what it was, but I remember Frank saying, "Do you have your cup on?" I said, "I will." And I saw when Mr. Parker would do all his elbow business, and he sometimes would miss. I'm thinking, dang, I hope he doesn't miss. So, I mean, he would graze it. He wouldn't hurt you. I mean, you feel it. But he got done, and I was doing this contortion stuff with him, He goes, "You didn't think I was going to do that, did you?" And I just looked him straight in the eye. I said, "Sir, I just hope it didn't hurt." He laughed. When he laughed, it was really good. It was heartfelt.
It was.
And, but I shared that other stories with you, so I don't have to go on to that. So let's move on. You continue your relationship with Ed Parker from 1967 till his untimely death on December the 15th, 1990. Right. I remember where I was. Where were you?
I was with him the whole day of the 15th, right? I said that. We did a couple seminars, and then one of the students' parents had a Christmas party close to the West LA school. So I went over there. Something happened during that seminar. Now, I knew him for 23 years. I've been his dummy. I've been in a lot of the magazines with him. And he always used, he would hit you, but he would always use control. Okay, it was a control hit. But he did something that day that he hadn't done in 23 years to me. And he asked me to do 5 swords in front of my sons, right? The little kids class. And I hey, I know how to punch him today, man. I threw this big punch. He did that double block. And then instead of his right hand sword coming to the right part of my neck, he did a back fist to my face. And out of left field, and I could feel it split my lip on the inside. My teeth split. So I'm drinking my blood, so the kids don't see the blood coming out of my face. And Ed Parker, he knew instantly what he had done. And I went, how did he go from an outward hand sword to a back fist and totally changed the target? I knew he was not well at that moment. And so after the seminar, this is typical Ed Parker. Here he is, senior grandmaster, 10th degree black belt. After that seminar, he sat down there was a bench right next to the mat area. He sat down, he looked up at me, and I'm a lonely over, maybe I'm a 4th or a 5th degree black belt. And he looks up to me and he says, "Jack, how did I do?" Humble to the day he died, right? So I said, "Ed, I'm really worried about you. You did something today you haven't done in 23 years. You are not okay." "Oh, I know, Jack, you're going to talk about my diet and stop eating this and doing that." But he says, "I'm leaving tonight for Hawaii. I'm going home. I'll be there for a couple weeks. I come back good as new in 2. I charge my batteries," exactly what he said. "I'll be back in 2 weeks." And then he said something else to me when we went over to the Christmas party, and he's eating this big bowl of chili. And he says, "Jack, I have this terrible feeling. My mom's getting old. She's getting up there in age. And I have this feeling I'm not going to see her anymore." The fact is, he didn't. He never did see his mother, but it wasn't, she did not pass. He, you know the story, he passed at the airport. So where was I when I heard about it, was your question. Edmund called me about 4 o'clock in the morning, and he shared this with me, and I'm dumbfounded. And I said, no, I was just with him. I was just with him all day. You know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I was with him all day yesterday. We did seminars together. We talked, we laughed. I walked him out to the car. I gave him the last bear hug from Kenpo. I gave it to him on his way to the airport. And, you know, nobody ever saw him after that. But you know what the family said to us? They said, it's just like Ed Parker to come home to die because, sorry, we're going to have a funeral for him here because he knew we couldn't afford to fly to the mainland. So he comes home to die for us. And then we send him back to Pasadena, and we had the biggest funeral. I talked to the bishop. He said, Jack, this was the largest funeral we've ever had in our church. Who are all these people that showed up? And he's talking about the Kenpo family. There was about 1,000 of us and 1,000 of his church members. So there's 2,000 people that, who are you? Who are you? And we just shared it. It was the most incredible, sad, but incredible experiences of my life. So that's where I was. Then I spent the whole day with the family and all that stuff. But
I visited his grave several times, and
yeah,
one of them was in 2015 on the 25th anniversary. And
yeah.
we did a whole display there with Darlene and Nalu. Frank Trejo came with me, and so did John Morello. And there's a side story I'll share. But we visited his grave. Darlene came and cleaned, you know, the plaque.
Yep.
And the day before, and it was, you know, a beautiful ceremony. We just had there, and there's a couple of posters and whatnot that I'll probably show with you sometime. And Frank opened his heart to Ed Parker. And he basically, he was very upset going from the nursing home to there. And when he got in front of him, it was rather funny. We're there, but he just remembered. He was reflecting, remembering, and sharing the inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a beautiful relationship between Frank Trejo and Ed Parker. And the depth of that relationship, I finally felt 6 months after his passing, Frank's passing in 2018, when I spoke to Edmund. And it was beautiful because Edmund says, I can't just tell you one sentence. So he wrote out several paragraphs, but he concluded, which was the ultimate. I said, he was my Kenpo brother. He was my father's Kenpo son. And when Frank talked at the gravesite 6 months before, he said to me, he said, he was talking, he said, Mr. Parker, I miss you every day. You were always the father for me. And it was just so heartfelt. This man transcended his disabilities because of his illness.
Yeah.
And he became a perfect human being in front, and you could feel the love and the spirit between these two men right there. It was very inspiring. There's an aura around Ed Parker. He is from the islands of Hawaii. Hawaiians are very deeply spiritual. He believed in his God. And I believe right now he is smiling down at people and hoping that they'll get it, encouraging. You know, when you speak, I hear Ed Parker. So that is why it's beautiful. So let's end with just his final thoughts.
Yeah.
Jack, Mr. Parker was a visionary. He truly was.
Yeah.
If he were here today, what would he be saying, in your opinion?
Okay. I've been asked that question before. And as you mentioned earlier, he was about forever evolving Kenpo. Always evolve it, because as he went from the islands to the mainland, he had to change Kenpo because what worked in the islands did not work on the mainland. And so he would want us to evolve. Jeff Speakman asked me one day what I thought about him taking Kenpo to the ground. Well, remember when Ed Parker died in 1990, the Gracie brothers weren't even around in 1990, but they changed MMA forever. And so Jeff took Kenpo to the ground, incorporated ground fighting in it. So did Muhammad Tabatabai. He got the Gracie system and he added it to the back of ours. Ed Parker would agree with both of those philosophies because it's continuing to evolve the art. You can learn from everyone. I've learned from white belts. They ask me questions that I've never thought of. And I think we just can, as I was given my black belt, as my first black, my 9th belt, and you know, on the right side is always open because there's always so much to learn. Here I am, a 9th degree black belt, and people say, well, God, you've come so far. And I said, are you kidding? This far. So there's so much more to learn. And Ed Parker told me something one day I never forgot. He said, Jack, so many of my guys don't get it. Like you mentioned, he can teach you to be a badass. In 6 months, you can kick somebody's butt. But that's not what Kenpo is all about. Ed Parker said, Kenpo is making you a better teacher, a better father, a better son, a better, yeah, it's just to be a better person is what Kenpo does. And Kenpo does, it adds in every aspect of your life. I'm different in all aspects of my life because of, number one, Ed Parker. And then, of course, I learned who Jesus Christ was, and then I was born again. But Ed brought me to Jesus Christ in his way. And he was never about preaching religion. He was never about preaching religion. But he was such a God-fearing man. And as I shared earlier, he was one of the most religious guys I knew. When I first met Ed, and I go, what kind of guy is this? He doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, he doesn't cuss too often, but he does. But I said, I don't understand this guy. How could he be one of the meanest people I've ever known in the street, but one of the warmest, generous hearts I've ever met in my life? So if guys like you and I can be this much of Ed Parker, we've done something.
You know, that was so wonderful. I'm so heartfelt listening to you. You're such a passionate man. I was very fortunate to get to know Mr. Parker on the personal side. I constantly refer to books like Infinite Insights, Zen. I use these. Look at these things. They're worn thin. Yeah. And I go back to this, and the purpose of it is to reflect on what he said. And I use some quotes. And, you know, the essence of what you said in one time before is that in the first book, the dedication was to his creator.
Yes.
Because he believed in God.
Yes, yes.
In volume 4, the dedication here was to the children and the grandchildren and the future, because that's our greatest resource. And finally, I think the best thing, and I'm going to read this real quick before I end. Okay. And it is, he dedicated the 5 volumes to help bring on to examine, investigate, explore, expound on the principles and concepts. Therefore, he dedicated this book, and he has in it the Black Belt Pledge. And I don't think people read these things.
No, you're right.
If they read it, they would never question the foundation, the 3 divisions of his art: basics, self-defense techniques, freestyle. If you can understand that, you will at least have a good basis when the essence of when your system or your training is necessary. And as a black belt, he says it right here. He ends it with this last line. Okay, he says, "It shall also be my responsibility to protect any student,
right,
ravenous individuals who would try to take advantage of personal weakness, to divest the gullible into unprofitable paths, to preserve the sacred things, God, family, and country, and
Kenpo.
appreciation. I pledge my all.
Yes,
Jack,
amen. Amen.
thank you so very much for your time. You are a truly a very, very valuable individual because you can help us understand a little more about Mr. Parker. You're a gift to the Kenpo community because of your knowledge and your experience. And most importantly, thank you for your friendship, sir.
Sure. Hey, anybody that has any questions about Ed Parker, please reach out to me anytime and I will do the best I can to answer them. And thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate this.
God bless you, sir. You have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the near future.
All right. God bless you, Paul.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. With no further ado, folks, that was Mr. Jack Autry, the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame Educational Video Series. Have a great night. Salute.